Welcome to the series TA Leaders, where we talk to some of the really impressive and innovative leaders in the industry, particularly about video and how they use it effectively in their organization. Today, I am thrilled to have Adam join us. Adam, would you go ahead and introduce yourself so that the audience knows who you are?
Sure, Maury. Thank you. Adam Fitzer. I'm a highly accomplished talent acquisition professional. I've been in TA over 20 years. I've built high-performing teams. I've mentored, I've coached and led and developed others. I've worked for both startups as well as Fortune 500 organizations and came up on the search side for the first dozen years before transitioning into a corporate recruiting role. I've worked across a number of different industries, FS and banking, healthcare, energy and utilities, et cetera, working with West Monroe most recently. Also somebody who's hired literally thousands of people over the course of my career. I've worked with hundreds of clients throughout the course of my career. A firm believer that recruiting is one of the most critical drivers of business growth. And oh, go ahead.
Adam, I think we actually met at the Candies originally, right? Because you were a multi-year Candy winner.
Yes. I actually have, funny enough, one of my candidate experience awards here. Yeah, I think it was one of the first years we won. I think we won back-to-back years over the course of about 7 years. So we met at the Candidate Experience Awards. We also met at Global TA Day, I think the first inaugural year in your office, Maury, if I'm not mistaken.
That's probably true. We've been around, and I'll say I've been a longtime fan of yours. So let's jump in right away,
Sure.
and just talk about video. What information do you think is best conveyed via video? When in your career have you sort of got, oh, yeah, candidates might be interested in this, but let's not write it out in paragraphs. When does that come up for you, or when has it come up for you?
Can you clarify that one?
Well, what kind of information do you think is most persuasive when it's in video? Like, there are times that video works and times that the text works. What do you think the times are? What are the kinds of things that you think just lend themselves to video?
Yeah, storytelling, for example, on the candidate side, if they're giving an example of something, I think sometimes it's easier to kind of see somebody as they're walking through and explaining a particular circumstance or situation, rather, to kind of get their mannerisms, to see the impact, ultimately how it made them feel, or their body language associated ultimately when they're describing a particular situation. I think that's incredibly useful.
And roughly how many videos do you think you made or you oversaw in the last 10 years? Ballpark, what do you think it is?
Oh gosh, has to be north of 3,000-ish, I would say.
Yeah. I'm amazed when people say, "Oh, we've produced 4." I'm like, 4,000 for what? I like 4.
But Maury, it goes on both sides, right? It's both from a candidate perspective and those who have submitted, both for campus where they do the pre-interviews, on the experience side ultimately, where we do kind of one-on-one video, and then lastly some of the content we put together as a team through our marketing and branding efforts as well.
And as a candidate goes through the whole job search with you, where are the points in that where you found video is really effective? I think we all use it for attraction, just to get our name out there. But once you go beyond that, where else? Where are the kind of places that you'd like to have a video that you could share with a candidate as they went through your process?
I think there are a few different areas. I think when I think about there are a number of advantages, but I think in terms of early on, we've used videos to garner interest, but once candidates are quote unquote on the hook, things to kind of dive into benefits, culture, day in the life, diversity, and some of the ERGs ultimately, recognition, employee recognition, and how we celebrate one another. So I think those are all good things when you're moving towards the interview stage. And, ultimately, when folks get further along in the process, I think it's good to kind of talk about things like career paths, for example. And we've had videos in the past that were incredibly helpful. If you're more of a visual person, as I am, it's better to see versus describe. And even with offer, we even had a portal where candidates could log in to kind of see total rewards modeled out personally, which I thought was awesome too. So it could be project specific. I mean, there's a whole multitude of areas ultimately, but it really depends on where they are in the journey, and I've seen them used effectively.
Yeah, I love it. We've found that our best clients have a real content calendar, a real content sequence, and think about what information is useful to candidates at different point of the journey, and what kind of eggs them on to stay involved and stay connected, so they don't have the fallout, which ultimately gets back to the efficiency piece, which is obviously really important.
Sure.
One of the things that we're really focused on here is credible content. Because quite honestly, we see a lot of dreadful stuff out there. Maybe I shouldn't admit that, but
Sure.
what do you think the common mistakes are that people make that really detract from credibility or getting all of the value that you can get out of video?
For me personally, it goes to video, but it also goes to the broader process. The consistent message, it needs to flow throughout. It can't be a one-off check the box exercise. It needs to be part of the conversations throughout the interview process, and it needs to flow and echo throughout any content that's shared with candidates throughout. My prior role, I had never heard of the organization, was not even a blip on my radar. But what did it for me, as maybe the pessimistic New Yorker that I can be from time to time, I think ultimately was the consistent theme throughout the course of conversations and the consistency throughout the content ultimately that I saw. It just added credibility to everything that I saw. And it really made a huge difference. And I had many candidates echo the same, that they couldn't believe how everybody was on the same page, both in terms of conversations as well as the content that was shared with candidates throughout the process.
And I'll bet you found that when you got there, that it was true, right? That everything that was echoed. We hear people
You
say,
can't fake it. You can't fake. I worked for another organization that tried, and it was a disaster. So
right, we hear people say, "Oh, we have to script our employees because we want them to hit the 3 pillars of our EVP." And I want to say, if your EVP is accurate, it's going to come through. You shouldn't have to be forcing people. And when you kind of force them to hit those keywords, if it's not part of their natural, sentence structure and language and so forth, you could really undermine yourself that way. So,
yeah,
um,
and that always starts with leadership. If you don't have leadership buy-in, it's not going to go anywhere.
yeah, yeah. It's the other piece is legal requires it, and we're going. "Nah, let's talk about that." So, and just sort of last question or last thoughts on just video in general. When do you think it's most effective, or where have you seen it? Is there anything that pulled you up short and went, wow, that's an innovative use, or damn, I wish I'd done that? Anything that's been really innovative that you had admired?
I guess, well, I mean, maybe regrets a little bit. Perhaps we didn't use video early enough in our interview process, and we're kind of forced to ultimately through COVID, where everything was, moved to virtual. But I think over time, what that did both to the TA team and the broader leadership is understanding how the flexibility benefits the business. Both sides are able to work around what's best for each individual. The flexibility associated, and we were working in a project-based environment where it's incredibly hard to get some of our leaders aligned and on the phone. So having that flexibility was great. In terms of aha moments, I think it was just the broader adoption. I honestly, I've been doing this over 20 years. I find some of our biggest detractors tend to be our hiring stakeholders who, use the age-old mantra, we've always done things this way. So being able to come in and add value and show the value firsthand through a number of different tools, including video interviewing, I think has been incredibly helpful. And it goes both ways, to your point. It's the interviews themselves, but it's also being able to use video to further enhance the EVP, as well as what it's like to work in an organization. If you have a great story to tell, you should be able to tell it, and video is a great way to do that.
And we've seen, I mean, clearly video interviews are more convenient, they're more flexible, all of that. But part of what gets lost there is getting to meet multiple people. When you used to come into the office for a day, you got to meet not only your boss, but your team. You got a feel for the vibe of the place. You got a sense of how formal or informal it was. And that's where we've seen video has been really effective, is in filling in those gaps. It's one thing to meet a hiring manager face to face, but it doesn't really give you a sense of the place. It gives you a sense of a person. And so we've seen people really think through that. What does it take for a candidate to feel comfortable having enough feel for our organization that they're willing to accept, even though they've never set foot on the place and they've never really met anyone other than the hiring manager and maybe a recruiter. So it really does help complete the picture. Anyway, Adam, thank you. Always great to talk to you. It's a privilege, and we will stay in touch. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Stop recording.